All right, so my first session was a river venue. I controlled another angler first, and then I got to fish in the second session of the morning. I started off, I had some really heavy pocket water. I talked to some of my teammates, and they did well with a soft tackle cast imitation with the chartreuse rib. And, it's one of my buddy Rich's flies. So I decided to tie one of those on. My teammate that I talked to fished two flies, but he didn't have as heavy pocket water as I did. I gained a lot of elevation in kind of a short distance in my beat water. So I decided that the one fly would be best. That way I didn't have to deal with all those micro currents coming down past the boulders, and I could just fish effectively without having to worry about getting effective drifts. And so he used two 2.5 beads. I said he had to go 3.0 in the deeper stuff. So I just went with a 3.0 single bead, and I ran about 4 feet of 6X tippet to my single fly for my sighter, and that was my rig. And I got right off the start. I took a couple casts. I rolled the fish right away. Just wasn't expecting it. A little late on the hook set, and then a few casts later, I hooked a nice brown, landed it, first fish on the board, and I just kind of slowly worked my way up through covering all the pockets. A lot of the fish were holding in the pockets themselves, where it was slower, obviously, and then on the far banks along the bank, the current, there'd be another shallow spot on the other side. I usually pick fish from both, and some where the water was like almost still water, and I'd throw it to the top, and there'd be a riffle next to it, and as the riffle would pull it from the still, I would usually pick up a fish. I didn't drop a single fish. I rolled 3, 4 fish, like that first one where I just rolled them. I didn't actually put a hook in them. But the ones I put a hook in, I didn't lose, which is an improvement. I tend to drop a lot of fish, which is frustrating, and it hurts you because one fish can be the difference between a certain placing point and that. I ended up fishing up through. I did really well. I finished with 17 fish in 2 hours, and like I said, I didn't drop a single fish. That was only good enough for fourth place that session. But I felt like I fished very well, very efficiently. I didn't find that I hooked a lot of fish in like deeper water, so maybe I didn't cover that as effectively as I could have. I know I put up the second most amount of fish on that beat. The person before me caught 17, and then I caught 17 right after her. And then just, yeah, with 4 minutes left, she told me I had 4 minutes left, and I took off sprinting to the bottom of my beat to try to pick up an extra fish at the bottom. And like I was sprinting, it was along the road, so I was like hauling ass down the road. And afterwards, we were walking back, and this couple stopped and just asked if everything was okay because they saw me running down the road like someone was in an emergency. But yeah, 17 fish, a fourth place placing, which I wasn't too happy with the placing, but I felt like I fished well. I was definitely happy with not dropping any fish. So not too upset. I was excited looking into the afternoon. And so we headed over into the afternoon, and the stream looked great. The water looked nice, looked super fishy, not kind of the similar water type, a little shallower than the first venue, but still kind of like pocket watery. So I did put on two flies because it wasn't as heavy of pockets. Started with 2.25s. I quickly adjusted that a couple times, and I eventually dropped to one fly, a 2.8 millimeter tungsten bead with the size 16 Frenchie, and same thing, 4 feet of tippet to the fly. And I worked up through, and I didn't really find fish where I thought I should have. Until I was playing around and finally got that Frenchie on. I picked up two fish probably at the second or third run up from the bottom of my beat. I picked up one, it was a small 19 centimeter brown. And then right after that, I picked up another 16 centimeter brown. And then shortly after that, I had a nice deep run, and I expected there to be fish. I noticed a fall fish, or a sucker, not a fall fish, a sucker hanging out in the back. And those counted as long as they were over 20 centimeters. So I took a couple minutes and tried to fish for that, to no avail. And then I expected a trout to be there. I ended up rolling a small trout that my controller saw, a little baby apparently, and didn't get him. And I moved up, and there was this big rock jutted down into the water at about a 70-degree angle. That's better, more like that. And it created this back eddy, and took a couple casts, but finally my line came tight. I set, and the fish just stayed deep, which is very typical of a big fish. And like it was fighting. I had it on for probably 20 or so seconds, and I'm like, "Have you seen this fish yet?" To my controller, because I hadn't seen it yet, because it stayed deep, was going around trying to get me underneath some rocks. It ended up being like a nice 14-inch brown, not huge by any standards, but this was a very small creek, so definitely a nice fish. Got a picture of it. And then next cast, I caught a brookie out of the same hole, and I was at that point, I was about a half hour in, and like I could already kind of see we're near the end of my beat, so I was a little nervous. I was moving too fast, and I worked back up. I worked the next pocket slowly, didn't pick up anything, and there was this tree. I threw my I switched to a black woolly bugger with no hackle. I don't put hackle on them. Big heavy 3.5 tungsten bead, size like 12, black woolly bugger, and started hitting the pockets with that because my nymphs didn't seem to be producing as much as I wanted to, because I had 4 fish, but I knew it was going to take more than that to win. Traditionally puts up double. You need double digits to win, unless it's kind of difficult for everybody. But so it started hitting those pockets with that. Didn't pick up anything. Then there was this tree along the side. Kind of these boulders came down. There's a main channel and there was this back channel with like an eddy and then a tree overhang. And I swung my bugger through there, kind of jigging it back like I would my streamers, and didn't hit anything. Then I threw the close edge. There was a rock. I picked up a small brown off that close rock, put me up to 5 fish. And then I moved up to a nice hole and started walking out. And all of a sudden, a fish rose like 2 feet in front of me. And I was like, oh crap. So I took 2 steps back, and then 2 casts later, I ended up catching that fish. And then went back, scored it, came back, and the same thing happened where fish rose, same spot. So I backed up 2 steps, first cast, a nice brown. And then farther, there was a nicer channel. I threw, caught a brown, and then I didn't really fish the far edge as much as I should have. I didn't fish the outer edge quite so much because I really didn't have that much time. At that point, I had like 15 minutes left. So I moved up to the next run, quickly picked up another fish out of the back of the run, and then another one from the middle, then one from the top, and then I moved up to the top, and I noticed there's this big, well, it came around the bend, I noticed there's this big waterfall, but it kind of looks shallow right next to it, kind of like there's some big boulders in it, but still kind of shallow. But then I walked up over there after catching those 3 fish, and it was super deep at the base, so I put on a big 3.5 Frenchie and just kind of tried to jig it through there and get as deep as possible. I didn't move anything, didn't feel anything, and I'm not sure if anyone caught anything out there during the whole event. I didn't ask. But with 1 minute left, I got the 1 minute call, and there was some carp where I just caught those 3 fish. So I decided to run back down there and try to catch a carp. Unfortunately, I didn't. That would have helped because those were pretty big, and they probably would have counted as like 2 or 3 fish. But that's it for the streams, the lakes. My first day was good. I was pretty excited. I felt like I fished well. I caught 11 fish total the last session, which was the most put up by that beat all weekend. It was by far the worst beat on that venue. It was absolutely trash compared to the other beats. I did well for that beat, but overall, I took a 5. I finished 5th out of 6 people that session because the beat just couldn't live up to what the other beats had. But so my first day was good. I felt like I fished really well. I had fished the 2 rivers. The next day I had the 2 lakes. Word from the lakes was the lakes were tough. The one lake was absolutely terrible. It didn't put up a fish all weekend. But, in practice, my teammate had caught some big browns out of there. And, I was kind of hopeful. And I fished the whole 3 hours with confidence. And I'm like, hey, it's going to happen this next cast. Because when you start throwing lackadaisical casts, that's when it happens. You're not prepared for it. You lose the fish. But I was in the zone. I was leaning into every cast, stripping back. I was in it the whole time, even though no one had caught a fish out of the lake yet. I was kind of, I kept telling my boat partner, like, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And he actually had hooked a fish. We don't know what it was because we never got to saw it. It snapped him off. Whatever it was pretty big. But I'm like, dude, I told you, like, I know it was going to happen. But unfortunately didn't catch fish even though I was so into it. Then we went to the next lake. The next lake actually did put up trout. It was taking like 2 or 3 fish to win a session. And the problem was it was like 180 some feet deep and the fish were suspended. There was a few fish cruising on the surface, but nobody could catch them on the surface. People were catching them like 18 feet down. I just couldn't figure it out. There was fish there. I couldn't luck into 1 or 2. and didn't catch anything. So I didn't catch any fish on day 2. Those venues were awful. I mean, the one had fish there. It was bad. It was bad venue. So was the first venue. I wish day 1. I wish the river was all 4 river venues. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It's okay. You know, I still got the thing that really pissed me off is like I didn't even get to practice casting because my type 3 kind of sticks a little bit. So that was super frustrating. But didn't I ended up finishing like 18 out of 24 overall. I personally felt like I fished better than that placement. Unfortunately, you know, it just didn't work out that way. It's whatever. I definitely got some good practice in on the river. Lakes, on the other hand, I learned don't fish those 2 lakes. That's what I learned. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to the next one. It's probably going to be a little bit since it was very hard to travel there over the weekend. I had to leave here, drive 2.5 hours home, and 2.5 hours to the competition. I was exhausted all weekend, took 5-hour energy each morning, and it was a lot. So I probably won't be doing any comps that far away, at least in the near future. I know in July there's one I definitely want to do, the one I do every year. So we'll see. I don't see myself doing too many comps, especially big ones like this, the rest of the season. Hopefully a few minis here and there that are close by, but we'll see. I say that now and I'll be like, I want to fish a comp, but we'll see. That was my comp recap. Again, be sure to like and subscribe. Helps me out. And let me know in the comments what you think. Any tips. If you want to know more about competitive fly fishing, leave that below. Anything, I'll be happy to answer your questions. But until next time, I'll see you.